Hello, my name's Ian Cunningham, co-founder of Action Career Services and the Corporate Healing Support Group. I'm joined by my co-host on In Transition the podcast, Stephen Edwards, who is also co-founder of Action Career Services and the Corporate Healing Support Group. Now that we got our plugs in, we just finished a fascinating conversation with Craig Colby.
Yeah, we absolutely did, Ian. And I think one of the things that really struck me was Craig's ability to really step through fear. And as you'll hear in the interview, there's some phenomenal results of that, one of which is Colby Vision, the other which is Career Recourse, which certainly I've viewed, and I would very much encourage our viewers to go and have a look as well. You know, fear can mobilize or it can paralyze, and Craig's done a phenomenal job in really utilizing it to mobilize.
I totally agree, and I encourage everybody to go ahead and go to colbyvision.net and find those resources. But first, enjoy the interview. This is In Transition the podcast, the story of Craig Colby. Welcome to In Transition, everybody. My name's Ian Cunningham, your host, with co-host Stephen Edwards, and the founder of Colby Vision, which was probably the coolest name of a business ever, Craig Colby. How are you today, Craig?
I'm great. It's cool to my mom and my kids.
Well, it's cool to me, too. So you've got one more fan in your last name. So, Craig, what was the inspiration behind Colby Vision? I mean, what happened that got you inspired to create this?
Well, I'd worked in television for 30 years. I'd been at TSN, I'd been at Discovery Channel. I had the highest rated series at Discovery Channel history, and left there after 10 years. Helped launch the first 4 HD channels. Was in charge of the content for an international nature streaming service that worked with former BBC people and Smithsonian Channel people. And I'd been doing all of those things for 30 years. While I was with the Forced HD channels, I had hired a lot of people who were fairly junior, so I created training programs for them in interviewing and storytelling, because if you really want to get your people there, you got to teach them the fundamentals and then work with them as they put them into practice. But then in 2017, while I was at Blue Ant and was with the nature streaming service, they moved my job to Washington, D.C., and they didn't move me with it. That wasn't an option. But the people at Blue Ant were extremely kind, extremely supportive, gave me a very fair deal. And when that happened, it was the first time in my career I was really at loose ends. And I had a chance to think about, so what do I want to do? And what's going to be available to me, and what's happening in our industry in the future. And I was in my 50s, so I knew it'd be harder to hire me. I knew that I had a really good skill set. I knew I was good at what I do, and I had a feeling I was respected. So I thought that what I was doing would be transferable to a business role. I still wanted to work in television, still wanted to try to get shows commissioned, although doing that as a true independent outside of a company is somewhere between climbing Everest and tilting windmills. But I still wanted to do it. And so I wanted to create a storytelling company that could service not just television, but across the board and do a lot of things, do training, work with entrepreneurs, work with companies, work in the broadcast world. So I had like a million ideas that I wanted to do at once. And I knew I was getting a big settlement, and I had a feeling I was going to make some money this year too. So I needed to hide that money, so that's why I incorporated. And I was very transparent about what was going on with me on social media. I've always been very open about who I am and what I'm doing. So I put it out there. Look, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going for. I'm creating a company. What should the name be? And I can't remember, like 150 suggestions. And 2 friends of mine had suggested Colby Vision. And one of them, who works in television, said that it would be good for me to have my name in the company so that it's easy for people to remember the company name. I always forget people's company names. So I went with Colby Vision. And one of my friends from Blue Ant, who had sent me a wonderful note when I was let go, and talked about how much he appreciated, how much I had talked to him and worked with him in his career. Wasn't under me, but somebody I worked with and really respected, offered to some help if I ever needed it. And I said, he was in graphics. I said, how about a logo? So he created a logo for me that I love, and it was off to the races. And the idea was to help both entrepreneurs, not both, it's three things: entrepreneurs, corporate world. Now I'm trying to get into educational institutions and still in broadcasting. So that's the idea: video production, audio production as far as podcasts, some writing for all of those three areas.
And how has COVID affected, you're kind of leading in. The startup of the business was what, 2017, 2018?
2017. And before I could, the first thing I did was, people reach out to you and they say, hey, let's talk. So I met with all of those people and they all bought me lunch, which was great. And I didn't really go with much intent other than just to see these people that I liked. So I told them what I planned to do, and I found out what they were doing. And 6 weeks in, one of my favorite people in the industry, Bree Tiffin, she called me up and said, we need a producer for this show. We've got this history show we're doing in-house. It's a big deal for our company. We need somebody right now. And I said I didn't want to produce. I would be happy to write because I wanted to start these other things. But I like her. I like what I heard about the show. So I went in and I did that show for 2 seasons, from 2017 through early 2019. And then I worked on a crime show that another friend of mine had brought me on. She had started to produce that show. And then I went back and worked for some friends at Discovery Channel on a show about trains. I was a story editor for them for 3 months. It was good work. I liked the people a lot. And they had offered me the chance to direct a 2-camera shoot on a luxury cruise from Argentina to Portugal. And it would be like 4 weeks at sea or 3 weeks at sea. I'd have 5 days off in the middle of the Atlantic. Then I'd write the show and take it through the edit suite. And Bree and her crew had offered me, were trying to get me to sign up to produce a pilot for them for Discovery Channel. I opted for the cruise because it just sounded too good to be true, which it turned out to be, because I was set to do that in April, and then things started happening in February. And I'd go into the office and say, we're still going, right? We're still going, right? And pretty soon the cruises were canceled, and then the show was canceled, and then Exploration Productions was canceled. And the other production company that I was going to work for, that division, part of a bigger company, that division was shut down. So not only was my work gone, but the places that knew me, that had seen my work since I was independent, they were gone too. And as you know, in this industry, connections are everything. And especially when the industry was shrinking, and then we went into COVID, like, people are going to go with their regulars, right? This isn't the time to take a flyer on someone else, no matter how good their reputation is. And I've been told I have a very good reputation. So I knew that I was in for a time when whatever was going to happen, I was going to have to do it. So I decided to go after that more corporate market, to go for customers outside of the television industry. And that's where in 2020 I put the bulk of my efforts.
And how are those efforts paying off?
Well, let's start with what those efforts were.
Okay.
Right? So I knew that I was trying to reach people who maybe knew me but weren't aware of me so much, or people who might have been aware of me or aware of what I've been doing, or people who were aware of me but didn't know me that well. So I knew what I had to do was define myself for people. And I had to not tell them I was good at stuff, I had to show them what I was good at. So I started by doing 2 online interview shows. I guess they're podcasts. I've got the audio for them, I turned them into podcasts. And there were 2 things that I wanted to be known for. I wanted to be known for working with businesses and wanting to tell their stories. So I created an interview series called The Business Heroes, where I talked to business owners about their businesses and told their stories, because I wanted that association. And I started with Lisa Bose, whom you know, and did a story about her books. And she was really great. We did a test run, and she gave me a lot of feedback. She really helped me up my game. She was a good coach for me. So I created a graphic opening, and I commissioned music. I commissioned the graphics, created a little cut piece off the top, because I wanted to show that I was professional and I could do things that other people didn't do. So I wanted it to look slick off the top, and that's the first thing I heard. Then I created another one called Narrative Drive Time. And I got URLs for all of these things. And Narrative Drive Time talks to storytellers about storytelling. And those are the things that I wanted people to know for. And I tried to do, I was really ambitious. I tried to do one of those a week when we started, when I didn't have much going on. And that's a lot. It's a lot. But, you start with your friends, you start with people you know, you sniff out some good stories and you put them out there. And I would just put them out there and put the promotion out there, and I would push them primarily on LinkedIn. That's where the business happens. I know we can talk a lot about LinkedIn. I think it's a great service. I put them out on Facebook. I created a Colby Vision Facebook page, pushed it out there. I put it out on Twitter. I created Twitter accounts for those. I didn't get as much for those. Learned a little bit about how to push things out on Facebook so that you can reach a bigger audience. And I started putting those out there so people would know who I am and what I'm doing and what they're associated with, especially since I was selling services on how to interview. I'd done a session with Staples on how to interview. And, I did those things not knowing if they would work. I hadn't done any on-air work since 1988 when I was a on-air radio reporter for CHOW. But I thought I'd always been a good public speaker, and I thought I had some decent presenting skills. So I put those out there, and I had no idea if any of it was going to work, right? I just wanted people to go, here I am, remember me. I wanted to be in front of their faces enough so that if they thought of something, they could think of me. It was marketing, right? And it was branding. So a couple of months into that, I got a note from a guy I went to university with, Bob Baker. We hadn't seen each other since university. He sent me a note and said, I'm at the Aga Khan Museum. We can't do our fundraising event in the fall in person. We need to do it online. And I don't want it to look like a Zoom call. I want it to look like CNN. And I've seen your stuff. I like it. Is this something you can do? Or actually he said, is this something Colby Vision does? And I said yes, because I had done tons of live event stuff, even though I hadn't really done them for my company. I said yes. So he went away. He talked to his people. Then they came back with a RFP, request for proposal. So I hadn't really done one of those before either. So I put together a request for proposal, put together a lineup to show what the show would look like. I thought, what can I do here? I can put together a basic budget. I can tell them what my vision for this would be, knowing what they wanted. I can give them a lineup. And I went down to my friends at Dome Production, and I knew that they wanted a certain live element to it, and there would be interviews, and I hooked up with Dome Production, and I included them in my request for proposal, which I think made me look a little more professional. Looked like I had contacts, which I do. It made me look professional, which I am. So I beat out I had the highest, I think I had the most expensive proposal, but I did something that I had learned at at one of the networking sessions. Somebody had told me there's an RFP, he calls the person who's in charge of the RFP and talks to them. He tries to get out of the RFP. But I called the person and asked a few questions, just wanted him to know me. So it turns out I won the proposal. I think knowing somebody had helped, and I think putting Dome Productions in there, so that had helped. So the marketing had worked, and I had this great job producing this event for the Aga Khan Museum. That was the first time that I had known or had some results from putting my own marketing out there and defining things. I also started a blog later because I wanted people to know that I could write. And I ignored a lot of the advice that people give you about blogs intentionally, and probably to my detriment in some area. But I wanted to do more social issues things. I wanted to see if I could get on programming that talked about what's going on today. So I wanted people to know I can write. So I started the blog, and then my conversations with people in the industry often started with, well, you're a great writer. And, first of all, thank you. But also, they wouldn't have known that if I hadn't shown it. Yeah. So, this is a long way for me to get to. The most important thing I thought I could do, and I didn't know if it'd be successful, is not just to tell people what I could do, but to find a way to show people what I could do.
Stephen, I've seen you've been putting your head down, making some notes, so go ahead and jump in there.
I think, I mean, Craig, it's an amazing story, and I think just having read through your website, colbyvision.net, shameless plug there. I mean, there's some
Only
great
shameless
writing
if I do it.
Ah.
You say it all you want.
colbyvision.net, colbyvision.net.
There it is.
And one of the things, and I'm going to step back a little bit, because you really
Sure.
in a blog that you put out in March of this year, actually, on your website, you talked about getting fired. And one thing from listening to your story, and actually reading through that particular blog, is generally when you're in a place for an extended period of time, and then you get that news, and we've all been through it. There's a hollowness that happens. There's a sinking feeling, and other things that in a polite surroundings I'm not going to mention, but you didn't seem to sink too deeply, let's say. Um, can you talk a little bit about that experience? So you got the news, that your services were no longer needed. There was going to be some changes, and talk about how you managed yourself through that period.
Well, it certainly helped that I didn't want to be there anymore. I was waiting for the package. And that's not a knock on Blue Ant Media at all. Not at all. There were things that I wanted to do. So when it came time, and Vanessa Case, who gave me the news, delivered it with real class. She did it on her own. She said, I didn't want anyone else here in case there was anything that you wanted to say that wanted to be off the record. And I just said, I don't think that's going to be necessary, right? And she was terrific, and human resources were terrific. And, it was something I'd thought about and something that I'd wanted. And I had sent myself the week before on my private email, so none of the ideas would be the company, ideas for 5 businesses I wanted to start.
Right.
So it didn't knock my socks off. I expected it to come sometime. I didn't expect it to come then.
Right.
So, but listen, even with all of that, you still have to go home, sit by yourself, wait for your kids to come home, so you can tell them you don't have a job anymore. And there is no way that doesn't feel like failure, right? It does.
It does. Absolutely. Yep.
So, and you can't run and hide from that. You got to feel what you're going to feel. It's like a good cry, right? When somebody cries, they usually feel better, or throwing up. When you throw up, you feel better afterwards, right? The more you try to suppress that stuff, it stays in you. So I had a great talk with my kids. They cried a little bit. At least my older one did. Not much, but, he had been through some bad news in his life. And so, so at that point, it was, what am I going to do? There were people who said, why don't you take the summer off? I felt like I'd been let out of a cage. So as far as not sinking, sure, I absolutely felt things. Was I scared? Absolutely. I'm still scared. But I think scared is your friend, right?
Right.
Scared is your friend. If you're not scared, you're comfortable. And it helps to be able to do uncomfortable things. And believe me, there are times I wish I was comfortable. But the scared is the stuff that gets you up in the morning. There are times I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I can't go back to sleep. I get up and I do something.
Right.
So I made a list of the things that I wanted to do, and it was way too much. There's no way I should have done all that stuff or even tried to do all that stuff. But I was throwing everything against the wall, and I wanted it to happen immediately. I said, okay, I'm going to sit down this afternoon, and I'm going to make myself a website. Yeah, I'm going to do that this afternoon, even in these easy things to do. It was so frustrating. I'm sure I drove my wife nuts, and I drove myself nuts. And I remember going to a 60th birthday party for my boss. And it's the first time my former boss from High Fidelity, Ken Murphy. And it's the first time I'd been around people and people I'd worked with since I had lost my job. And I actually I didn't feel myself. I felt myself in the one-on-ones. I didn't feel myself in a group. And I thought, I'm not sure I should be here. I really feel vulnerable.
Right.
But at the same time, everybody there was really nice and really supportive. The only thing that, if I didn't seem too down, It's because I did stuff. And when you do things, when you make a plan and you execute it, you're no longer helpless.
Right.
You are not at the mercy of anything else. You are, pushing that plow through the field.
Right.
Right. And then it's just a matter of whether you're going to have a crop or not. You're not sitting there hoping somebody brings you something to your table. So I figured out what I could do, and then I did it.
Right. So in other words, it's really taking control. Obviously, because you do have that sense of loss of control.
Absolutely.
And so when I listen to you, and certainly when I've read your story, what jumps out to me is that you took control. You were on the front foot as opposed to on the back foot, and really, it took you a while to find your way, but you sort of immersed yourself in different things in order to do so.
It took me a while to get the things done that needed to get done,
Mm-hmm.
but it always takes a while to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Nothing happens immediately. Like, I wasn't patient. My best friend's dad will say to my mom all the time, Greg needs to be more patient, but he needs to be as patient. And I'm not. And our strengths are our weaknesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of my strengths and my weaknesses. I try to be patient,
Mm-hmm.
but I want these things done now.
Right.
And it takes a while for me to just relax and enjoy the process.
Right.
But, every freelancer in the world will tell you, when you finish a job, your first thought is, will I ever work again?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that from every single freelancer. There isn't one who hasn't said that,
Mm-hmm.
even the most successful people. So, for me, I've always got to be accomplishing something. What am I doing to push this ahead? And even if you don't know if it's going to work, but you don't,
Right.
I mean, you listen to advice from people. The things that I started weren't all original ideas. They were advice that I had from other people and things I saw other people doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you just do them and you see if they work. You just
Right.
go ahead.
And there was, and if I was going to put a bow on that, there's an incredible self-awareness that you demonstrated through that period that certainly through your writing and through your storytelling comes across very, very, very clearly. And I think you'd actually mentioned that, just understanding who you are, what you can do, and focusing on what you're capable of doing and your skill sets. And that's something, again, that really took you down this road, which has resulted in ColbyVision.net. So I think it's,
I like you, Steve.
I'm trying to help you out, buddy. It's a great service. What you put together, Greg. I really admire you, and I'm saying this in all seriousness. What you put together, having gone through transition myself, and Ian's gone through it as well. You realize very quickly that it feels like you're on your own in a lot of ways. And I think one of the things that you've done is kind of disprove that notion that there is help out there, and there are people who've been through it, and you're not alone. And I think that's one of the things, and Ian, we've discussed this many times, is understanding that you're not alone, that there are people who have gone through it, who are going through it. I think that's 50% of the battle in getting you to where you want, in helping you get on the path to where you want to be. So I think that's a bridge that's a gap that you're bridging, in an incredible way.
Exactly, and that brings us to the other part of your, ColbyVision.net, the recourse.
Career recourse. Yeah.
Yes, career recourse. And as Stephen says, you've helped yourself, obviously, overcome the difficulties of being in transition and the difficulties of being an entrepreneur, but you are giving back. You have set up resources that just aren't out there, and have managed to collect them and put them in one place. At what point along this journey did that become a vision and you needed to get that done?
Well, I saw a lot of my friends in the industry losing their jobs, right? And I knew how it felt. And, I wanted to do something. I've always thought during the pandemic that what you do during the pandemic is going to matter when it's over. And I'd been looking for things that I could do to help people. Initially I created a little video series that I shot at my dining room table on just some pointers for interviewing, because interviewing is the great secret weapon in the arsenal of anybody who's learned how to do it. And so, I created some things like that, and I thought that would be helpful. And then I thought doing the business heroes would be helping those business people. So that's a way to help. Those were all helping me to some degree. But I knew that I had the whole setup for doing the interviews. I'd been networking, so I knew people with a huge variety of skill sets. I built my own website, and I created these online interview shows / podcasts, or whatever you want to call them. And I thought, I have all the tools here to help somebody through this period and give them the help that I didn't have. The one thing I keep telling people is not only didn't I know the answers, I didn't even know what the questions were, right? I didn't know where to start or who to ask or what I should do or what I should be considering. Even simple things about how do I negotiate a settlement? What do I do with it to shelter it from taxes? Do I start a business? How do I do an interview? How do I set up a resume? All of those things. I knew everybody who had answers to those questions. How do I network properly? Right? That's something people overlook. What's the best way to do that? So I wrote down all the questions that I would have, and I went out and found people who had the answers. And then once I started doing that, and I'm in a couple of networking groups, people in there started approaching me. I could talk about this. And the rules that I put out for people, because there were a lot of people who wanted it just for self-promotion. And the qualifiers I put on were, it has to answer a question, and a question that can be acted upon. Right? It can't be the question. The answer to the question can't be, your marketing line, whatever that is. It has to be, this is what you can do. So, I said to my wife, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to create this resource. I think I can do it in a week. And she looked at me, and her eyes got huge. Like, here's Craig biting off something huge again. And I said, no, there wasn't much going on at that time, which is, of course, the time you should be, stamping up to make money, which I was. But I said, I think I can do this. I think it'll make a difference. I think I can help people. I really want to help these people. So I just started doing the interviews. I knew I wanted it to look good. I went to Kevin Francisco, who's one of my go-to guys in graphics. I paid him to create a graphic look for it. And he did a great one. That was money out of pocket for me, but well spent, because I wanted it to look professional. And then I went through the groups that I have and went through all the questions, put it together, created a website, built the website myself, which I'm sure people who do it professionally will go through and see all the mistakes and what was difficult about it. But in about 2 weeks, I had it up. And then my friend Teresa Cruz, who has a company that promotes things, she'll help you. If you've got a business, she'll help you promote it. She offered to do the promotion for it for free because she believed in it too. And that's the reason it got so much media, and it got a lot of media, is because, Teresa Cruz, who charges, thousands of dollars to do this, did it for free to help people. And all the people that I talked to, everybody said yes, and people volunteered. So, and, I got a lot of good publicity out of it. But all those people gave their time and their expertise for nothing, just to help people. And there were some people that I had worked with that had called me up and said it helped them. But I was actually looking at trying to considering what a list of successes and failures for the year would be. And I was thinking, I didn't get it in enough hands. I didn't get it in the hands of people who are recruiters, although I did contact somebody at a YMCA who thought it was excellent. But I still haven't managed to get it in those hands. So I thought, kind of a failure that not enough people have seen it, although it has helped a lot of people. But I was at the grocery store the other day, walking into Loblaws, and it took a second for us to recognize each other because we had our masks on, but I saw a friend of mine from the TSN days, somebody I lives in the neighborhood, I played softball with, and he stopped and said, I really like your podcast. And I didn't know which one he was talking about. I thought it maybe meant Narrative Drive Time because a lot of our colleagues, mutual friends are on that. He said, yeah, it helped me get a job. And I said, oh, because then I realized it was Career Recourse. And he said he had been off work for 11 months. He worked for Disney, and Disney moved their jobs back to California. And he had some time. He had to recover from a rotator cuff injury. And he said that he had watched all of them. He'd watched all of the interviews. And in particular, one by Hilda Gann, who is a human resources specialist, and she's wonderful. She talked about what to do in an interview. And he said he went through all of those things, took all the advice, made the notes, incorporated them, and it helped him get a job.
Wow.
And that's the one that really made me feel good. I came home and told my wife, and we both hugged each other and cried a little bit, because it's, you put these things out in the world, you never know if they're going to work. You never know if they're doing any good. When you see a friend, somebody you care about, and it's helped them, that is no longer on my failure list for the year.
Wow.
So the point is, for anybody who's listening to this and who's lost their job, or anybody who's kind of poking around to do something new in an industry, because a lot of people told me that. The networking people said it's the best stuff they've seen on networking. It's all just people sharing their incredible expertise on things that you can do to get a job or change your career or network better even within your career. So it's really a great browse. Free. It'll always be free. It's always going to be there for people to go in and take a look at it. And you can find it at colbyvision.net. There's a link to it, but you can also go to careerrecourse.com, and that'll take you directly to the page.
And I've got to say, I mean, you do have a way with words, very short, very succinct, because right at the top of it, it says, "I've lost my job. What do I do now?" And boom, everything below that. That caught me. Like, again, you that's the first thing you do. You walk out of that building, and that's the first thing in your head. What do I do now? And there it is in front of me when I check your link and check your website. So, you've hit it on the head with the question that is being asked the most. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. And the truth is, it's not going to answer that question. There isn't one interview that answered that question in there. But all the interviews are, because it's different for everybody, but all the interviews in that site are a breadcrumb trail that will help you find the path to your own answer, right? That's what all of those interviews are, just one little piece along the way for you to listen to and think about. And you can contact any of these experts. All of their information is there if you want to reach out and say, tell me more. And most of them offer free consultations. If you want their professional services, you pay for that, but that is also deductible. That's a deduction you can have in your first year off and unemployed. There is a program out there with the government that pays for training. So if there's any training that they offer, you can get a grant for that. So yeah, I think it's a great resource, and I really appreciate you two asking me about it, because I really, really, really want people to use it, because I know it's helped people. 2 people have told me it's helped them get jobs.
Well, I can tell you, Craig, both Ian and I have gone through this process, and we've gone to different courses, and we've listened to different experts and so on when it comes to networking and all of the experiences, let's call them, that you have when you're in transition. And I've got to say, first of all, having all those resources in one place, as Ian said, is terrific, and it does help you. Build a path that I know certainly I wish I'd known at the time that I was going through it. That would have made my life a lot easier. So I can definitely, I think, as somebody having gone through it, I can absolutely see where those benefits are, and I would encourage anybody who's listening to go over and check it out. I would defy you to tell us that it doesn't help you in some way. I mean, and ultimately that's what this is all about.
Craig, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being honest and open, and I want to thank you for being a helper. What you created, like Stephen said, it is definitely the breadcrumbs, the paths that people need to get themselves through a tough time being in transition. So I thank you for joining the In Transition podcast. And what's the website, Stephen, to go check out Craig Colby and Craig Colby Vision?
Colbyvision.net.
Excellent.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much. Real pleasure to talk to both of you. Hats off to both of you for the services you provide, reaching out and helping people. You're making a difference in people's lives. And, my message for anybody out there who's going through this is you got to take care of yourself first. Like, you got to lick your wounds a little bit, and you got to go to the people who care about you and want to support you. And once you feel like you got a little bit of your feet under you, do something. Because when you feel you're at the mercy of everything, that's when it's depressed. Once you start to do something, then you have some control, and control is where you have power. And even if it doesn't work, you can learn things along the way of one path that may lead you to another.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Take care, gentlemen.